Hi, friend. Happy Wednesday. So good to see you. I hope you are having an amazing start to the week. I am coming in from Austin, Texas. I would love to know where you are coming in from. So if it's your first time here, say hi over in the chat. That's kind of where all the fun happens. You'll see that me and Jeff and Giacomo and Shelby and Rich and Janelle, we're already all chatting together. So we would love for you to pull up a chair, join in, say hello, because we love, love, love when new people join us at our very fun coffee table. If this is your first time here, we're so excited to have you. We talk to interesting executives, founders, CEOs, consultants, and we pick their brain and we ask them really great questions. And today is no exception. Becki is one of those people. I've talked to her many times before. I've watched, I think, nearly every single one of her LinkedIn learning courses. She has like at least over 10 last time I checked. So she's got a lot of content on there. And one of the reasons I really love talking to Becki, if you haven't already done your Google stalking of her, I encourage you to very much do so. But Becki always really helps me think about how I'm showing up in the workplace. And what I mean by that is not just showing up physically, but how I'm making other people feel, the type of questions that I'm asking, if I'm opening up dialogue, if I'm able to solve problems, and really helping me reframe how I ask questions, how I stay curious. And I think the reason I really resonate with this subject, and maybe you do as well, is I feel like when we're first out of college or university, everything is very new. So we're like constantly asking questions. We're like, what's an expense report? And how do I file this? And then when you get like 5 years out of university, 10 years, okay, maybe for some of us, we're into the 15 and 20 category at this point. A little depressing, I know. We sort of get stuck. I'll speak for myself. I've had my business now for 15 years. You know, you're sort of making the same apple pie, if you will, every day. You sort of stop asking questions. You sort of stop getting curious. You're kind of like, this is the way I've always done it, you know, almost like second nature. And why I think Becki is just really smart and interesting and somebody that I really enjoy talking to is she helps kind of break me out of that habit and really makes me think critically about how I'm showing up and the way that I'm approaching work. So if you are like me, if you have been doing your job or in your industry for a little bit, I think that you will also find Becki's content and answers really enlightening. If you just got out of university, we're all jealous of you. Enjoy being 23. Drink all the beer. I promise. It never, as you get older, it all goes to your hips and you get headaches and it's not nearly as fun. So enjoy that while you're young. But without further ado, I love that Molly and Jim and Anna and Barkley and Mokin are here. I'm so excited. And Marcello and Richard and Amir to help me raise up whatever caffeine of choice you've decided to bring today. In my case, it's tea, but who knows what's in your cup? And help me welcome Becki to our coffee chat. Hey, Becki.
Hi, Kim. Hi, everyone.
I forgot to mention, but I think that you should mention it. If we get some good questions, not only from me, but from the audience, what's in store?
There may or may not be some rubber chickens in store for you. Bring your best questions. You don't want to get a mushroom, but you may want to earn a rubber chicken. So let's see who earns the rubber chickens.
Straight from our workshops.
Straight from our workshops.
I know. Where did the rubber chicken start? You have to let us know.
Well, it started when we are dealing with, in our workshops, we're dealing with really kind of serious topics. Yeah. Critical thinking, curiosity, and the application of curiosity, and a different way of looking at making better decisions. And so I wanted to bring some fun and frivolity to the workshops by saying, okay, this is a little silly, but what happens is people really want, it's really important. It's really cool to earn these rubber chickens. And once in a while, you might see a rubber chicken show up in your mailbox.
I love it. I hope I get a rubber chicken today. We'll see how good I'm
We'll
behaving.
see how you do.
Okay, as I sort of alluded to before, one of the things that I love getting from you is really helping me sort of think better, for lack of a better term. And one of the things that I think is really helpful for me, and I'd love for you to share a little bit more with everybody here, is sometimes I feel like, especially on conference calls or in meetings, things just start to get really fast paced, and it starts to get really fast, and I feel like I can pay attention to like getting curious and like structuring my questions better. But when things get fast paced, it's hard for me to slow down and slow down my thinking. So for anybody else that might be in a workplace that just is operating at a really fast level, how can we still take the time to slow down?
Part of it is the more you practice, the less you
Yeah.
actually have to slow down, because curiosity and better questions, or as we call them, MVQs, most valuable questions, begin to kind of come to you like second nature. So initially, yes, you do need to slow down. You do need to acknowledge, okay, am I operating in default? But eventually with practice, and I can give you some little simple ways to practice where you are empowered to ask the questions and allow your curiosity to be aimed at a very particular thing, to be applied to solving problems, deeper understandings, deeper insights. Once you practice that, you don't have to slow down as much. So you can then operate in a very fast-paced environment. And I'll add one thing. I think this is critical because throughout history, we looked at fact claims. I saw that with my own eyes. I heard that with my own ears. And you could rely on that video, that audio content as a fact claim. This person said this and did this. Okay. And then you could use a truth claim to say, what does that mean? Well, it means they must be this or they must be that. Both of those things are out the door with AI. So now, if you don't slow down, crank up a little bit your skepticism meter, not cynicism, skepticism, practice getting curious. How can I know if this is really true? Critical thinking question. What does this mean in terms of strategy? Strategic thinking question. Then you're going to be blindsided by things that we used to be able to take for granted. So that's my long-winded answer of moving quickly and still being curious.
Yeah, I'd love some tactics around maybe being able to practice this in real time, because I think that that's what I personally struggle with. I feel like either I'm sort of slow and I'm able to do it, and maybe I'm just trying to like do too much too quickly. I don't know. What are some practice tips you have around that?
Well, okay, so we're going to start with a question for the audience because it's good to center
Yes.
it in your own kind of scenario. So think about something where you're in a situation where I can't ask that. I mean, I would love to know, but I can't ask that. Well, maybe the answer is this, this, and this. So you fill in the answer when you never ask the question. So you assume that your answer might be right. So get that in your mind. And there is a great example that just happened recently. A friend of mine is a product manager, and they were talking about getting this product out on June 1st. And all of the engineers knew that that was like kind of a ridiculous deadline. The designers were cutting corners. The marketing people were like trying to figure out. No, everyone was like, how can we do this? And my friend, who is the senior product manager, was saying that she was wondering, where did this June 1st come from? But she didn't want to look like she wasn't a team player. And she didn't want to look like she was being, like she couldn't stand up to the challenge of meeting the June 1st. But then she said, but then I was curious. I wasn't curious, like, where did this June 1st date come from? It was really, where did this June 1st date come from? And so she said, so my default was assuming that if I asked that, these things would be true about me. But when she challenged that default, she thought to herself, how can I find out this information in a more elegant way without defaulting to it must mean this, or everyone thought it must be the senior leaders that set the date. Well, it turns out that she did finally say, hey, I have a question out of curiosity. How should we think about this June 1st date? Where did it come from? there was silence. Like people were like, because everyone was wondering the same thing. And finally, it turns out that somewhere back in time, a few months prior, someone had put a placeholder in the deck that this was the date that the product had to launch. It wasn't the date, but that placeholder built on a wall and roll of assumptions that built and built and built and built till everyone just assumed this June date must be the right date. And it turns out it was just this arbitrary date that was put on one slide that lived in a world of assumptions until someone was curious enough and elegant enough to ask the question. So that was identifying the default. What is this default protecting? If I ask this, well, they must be this. The senior leaders must have put that date in. If I ask, I'm going to look like this and this and this. But I really need to know. And how can I ask that question in an elegant way to still protect that default? So that's just an example. And it's fun to think about those things. I can't ask that. We're not supposed to ask that. Really?
Totally. I love this idea of really challenging assumptions at work, but also home life. What are a few questions that you sort of have in your back pocket to use that helps people improve the clarity in their conversation, help kind of bust through maybe some of those assumptions? Do you have some like go-to kind of phrases and questions?
Yeah, sometimes it's simply, we're told to get to the why and get to the what. And I am not suggesting that you don't get to the why and get to the what, but I am suggesting that if you ask why and what, why did we do this? What are you thinking? That can be seen as a little bit combative. So replacing the why and the what with how or could, just those simple kind of, instead of convergent questions, starters, divergent questions. How can we think about this June 1st date?
Yeah.
Versus where did this June 1st date come from? Or why do we have this June 1st date? Or what is this June 1st date? So just creating that, it's almost like, help me think about this versus give me a reason. That simple shift, how might, how could versus why should, is a big game changer that allows you to explore curiosity in a safer way.
Well, and I feel like in addition to sort of assumptions at work, like the one that you talked about with like the placeholder date, in addition to assumptions, there's also a lot of bias or noise when it comes to decisions in the workplace. So even if it's a bias like, the sales team is always slow, or, whatever, the programmers, they always interject at the Monday meeting. I'm just curious, for you, obviously you work with tons of groups and thousands of people over the years. What are some of the most common biases that you kind of see showing up in the workplace? Is it sort of personnel related, that whole the sales team is always slow, or?
No, actually they're cognitive biases, which basically these are mental shortcuts that we have because we're pattern makers as humans. We are pattern makers. So basically believing things that support our pre-existing beliefs and rejecting evidence that does not, or things that come easily to the confirmation bias, or things that come easily to mind. That might be the availability bias. You might think, oh, well that, or the affect heuristic. I really like this person, so I should go along with what they are saying that we should do for this project or whatever. So these cognitive biases, these aren't things that are, gossipy or attitudinal. They are baked in brain bugs that help us in a lot of cases make quick decisions. They're very useful, but they can lead us astray when they kind of become a default in our decision making. So that's, those are some key biases. But noise is different, because most people think that noise is either, volume or signal and noise. How do we see through all the garbage? There is a third kind of noise, but it's kind of mathy. So people are like, what, whatever. And that is when you want the one right answer. And by the way, we don't always want the one right answer. Sometimes we want a lot of different answers. We want a diversity of answers so that we can work through it. But when we want one right answer, i.e., is this mole cancerous? We don't want we don't want 6 different opinions from 6 different doctors. We want to know
definitely not
the one right answer. But when you're getting multiple answers, that's a different kind of noise. That's unwanted that's unwanted variance. So there are certain things where bias and noise can play with each other. In a group decision, the person who speaks first can have an undue influence on the decision. So now that we have, people are making decisions, we're here, we're talking, but we can make decisions where we might want to vote on our initial, our initial thought about what option we want anonymously before we get into brainstorming. So moving collaboration till after evaluations. There's things like that. So those are some more meaty tricks in the annals of decision hygiene. But those are things that are at play too. So you can formulate your own decision, kind of formulate your initial thought of what you think should be the way forward, and then indicate how willing you are to change your mind. Because a willingness to change your mind, where we think it's flip-floppy, oh, I thought you said this, should be seen as a great critical thinking practice. Basically, upgrading your thinking in the face of evidence. So having a culture where you allow people to change their mind. You don't say, well, I thought you said this. Well, that's before I learned this, this, and this. So those are some tricks and tips that you can think about, particularly in group decisions where there's a lot of noise and bias. So
I love this idea of really thinking about group decisions, because I feel like, and again, I'll speak for myself, but I think that this is true maybe for a lot of people here. I'm curious what everybody else thinks, but I think sometimes when we have a big decisions in front of us, whether that's a big work decision or a big life decision or a big project decision, our default tends to be, well, let me just ask 5 people. Let me ask my best friend, let me ask my boss, let me ask my spouse, let me ask my coworker. You start doing these, like, I call them like surveys, like, okay, I'm temperature checking, like, these 5 people on a big decision. And I'm just wondering if you didn't want to listen to, not listen, but if you didn't want to necessarily just immediately start to outsource, what's a technique that people can use to check their own thinking before making a big call, before you just automatically sort of start outsourcing it to your best friend, your boss, your spouse, etc.?
Excellent. The first thing is to get specific about 2 things: your purpose and your values. And values, I don't mean it's this ethereal kind of thing like, oh, I say that my value is, compassion or whatever. Know that your value that you pick, and ideally, like if you pick 3 values, that those need to be reflected in the option you choose. So before you go out and start asking your friends, which I think is crowdsourcing decisions is great, but it's about doing it at the right time. Because if you crowdsource your decision before you have been clear about your values and clear about your purpose, my purpose in buying a house is to be in a specific school district because my kid has, special needs or something like that. Okay, so I need to be in this specific school district. And this is my purpose in buying a house. Then you go out to all these people and they say, oh, that's not the area that's appreciating. If you move here, you could paint that up and flip that house and make up. That's not what you're optimizing for. So it's very important to get clear by yourself about what you're optimizing for, your purpose and your values, before you go out and start asking your friends and great, getting the great input that is useful once you have those guardrails set.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel like sometimes I'm guilty of just like immediately starting to like survey the crowd instead of stopping and really asking the question to myself first, which I think is really important.
Yeah. Like, let's just say that you say, okay, I want to have a podcast, or I want to have a YouTube channel, or and I think it's really cool because maybe that can get me more speaking things or more LinkedIn learning. And you need to take a step back because all these people are like, oh yeah, you should do that. You should do that. well, you should do that because it feels really great and people were going to love you. And what is your purpose? What are you optimizing for with this? Because people are going to give you their views on what they would optimize for in their situation, and it may not work for you.
1,000%. Now, okay, we have our first potential rubber chicken question.
Okay, let's see it.
And that is coming from Jeff, and he's asking, how do you think about challenging leadership or challenging people in the workplace when those people are part of an organization that, maybe there's politics involved, inner workplace dynamics, or maybe your boss is connected to another boss that you're looking to get a promotion or job from. So I guess, how do you navigate a workplace that you think to yourself, this might be a little dicey?
Okay, so again, starting with what your goal is. So in your scenario, Jeffrey, it might be, let's just say that you wanted to support a particular initiative or something, or maybe it was something personal. You wanted to have a promotion to another job. The main thing to start with is to get curious about, first of all, who do you need to influence, and get curious about how familiar do you think they are with what you're trying to achieve? And I'll give you kind of an example. You go to buy a car and you are the first day out, you're looking, and the person is not asking you anything about how much you know about this car, how long you've been looking for this car. They assume, let's just say it's me, they assume that I know nothing. Who is this lady? She doesn't know anything about cars. And let's say it's true. I don't. The kinds of questions they are going to ask are very different because they should figure out, how familiar am I with this Mini Cooper car? How familiar am I with all the car options that are out there? But if they start just slamming me with features, they're not even asking, what is your purpose in buying this car? My purpose might be, I want comfort on the road. Or maybe I want sustainability. So the first thing is to really get curious about what they already know, this team, these people that you need. And it's usually a person. It's not usually a group of people, because decisions reside in one brain and then they get infected in other brains. So it's very good to kind of pinpoint that one key person. Now imagine I have looked and I am ready to say yes. I go to the Mini Cooper dealership and I know exactly what version I want. And they start spewing all these features because they think I don't know anything. Well, 2 weeks ago I didn't, but now I know, and I know exactly what I want. They should be asking me more close-ended questions because I'm ready to say yes. So it's very important to identify who it is you're trying to influence, what you think they already know about this topic, and then ask the appropriate questions, which I think is what we cover. Actually, it's in one of the curiosity courses where we talk about for influence, using curiosity for influence. That's it. So actually, I think in this particular case, rubber chicken. Rubber chicken. Hopefully that was not too obtuse.
Yeah, exactly. I love this point from Frank too, because you kind of walked us through 3 questions there to kind of think about. But I love this point from Frank too, which he says, before making a big decision, I ask 4 questions. What is the best thing to do? What is the right thing to do? What do I want to do? And what are my responsibilities? I think those are pretty great.
Okay. And it may be in here.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of this decision?
Yeah.
Where is that? Is that in what is the best thing to do? Well, then you have to say, what is the best thing to do? Given that I want to be in a particular school district because my child needs to be in a particular school district because they have special needs, or given that this is my first house and I need this first house to catapult me because I want it to be a fixer-upper so I can sell it and make money, or given that I really need safety, financial safety, personal safety, family safety, that's going to determine what the best thing to do is. So I think if you added one more question, kind of one envelope, kind of one umbrella question, these questions become very powerful.
Yeah. And I think, to your greater point, a lot of it is just really getting to the root of the questions and what questions you're trying to ask. One of the things that I love that you talk about is the difference between a good question and a transformative question. Because I think a lot of times people just think like, Becki, a question is a question is a question. So I'm curious, how do you describe to people like really what the root of those two types of questions are?
I think one of the least explored, because there's a lot of stuff out there about asking better questions. Should you ask a close-ended? Should you ask an open-ended? Should you ask a divergent? Should you ask a convergent? But what about an empowering question? What about the kind of question that people love to answer? How can you make this question get you what you need, satisfy your curiosity, but also satisfy the person that you're asking? Something where you are looking, and one of the ways to do this is a little trick, is to find an uncommon commonality. Oh, I notice you have you have some ribbons from horse racing on your wall. How do you think about how horse racing has really informed how you think about products in general? Like, bring in something that they are going to kind of have to grapple with, but not so much cognitive friction that you're asking them about, fine art, because they have these horse, so meet them where they are, give them an opportunity to share something, find an uncommon commonality. Oh, we both went to University of Oregon. We're both Duck fans. Go Ducks, or something like that. And then you can pull them in. But that uncommon commonality is like a lubricant for good questions.
I love that. Do you have a sort of go-to that you yourself use with people, or is it kind of always changing?
Well, okay. So I have this one go-to, and you guys can share your comments in the chat because I love this. And there will be rubber chickens for interesting ones, which is, what did your childhood smell like? I love that question because it makes you go, and everyone had something. So hey, Kim, what did your childhood smell like?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I really got to think about this one, Becki. What did my childhood smell like? Volleyball gyms and like Gatorade. Like sports. I played a lot of sports, so I feel like it smelled like sports.
Okay, so I bet you, and I don't know, I mean, you've been doing this for a while, you've got a huge audience. What percentage of your audience knew that you played volleyball and drank Gatorade?
Yeah, I mean, probably not a lot because I don't talk about my childhood. Unless anybody wants to play therapist, and then I'll be like, it all started in first grade. They pushed me on the playground. I don't talk about my childhood a lot.
Yeah, but what did your childhood smell like is really egalitarian. I mean, we're not asking for what was your favorite vacation, because some people didn't get to go on vacation. Well, we didn't ask, what was your favorite thing to do as a kid, because that creates then you're kind of thinking, okay, how do I want to present myself? But what you're doing is, everyone had smells. Grass. One person said smoke. My parents smoked. It smelled like smoke. Another person said grass. Another person said pine needles because I was always in the woods. So you get something that is in a way safe and perhaps more interesting. So that's one of my go-tos.
I love that one. That's so good. Also, I wanted to highlight this point from that Carissa made earlier because I thought it was a good one, sort of what we were talking about previously. But when we were talking about those how or could questions, just really the value of putting people on the same team. I think that that's one thing we talk about in negotiations as much. It's not you versus somebody else. It's both of you versus the problem. And I think a lot of that same mindset can be used towards questioning and having that curiosity as well. It's not you questioning somebody else, like, why isn't that due date, a different due date? But really it's you and the other person questioning what's happening.
And that allows you to cross hierarchical structures. You can ask someone in tech and you are in design. You can ask someone in marketing and you are in finance. How can we, not how should we, how can we think about this? How might we think about this? Should implies there's one right answer to think about it. So finance person is going to say we should think about it this way. Tech people are going to say they're thinking about how might we think about this due date? And then you could actually say, where did it come from? Because you've softened the blow.
Totally.
So that is moving a question and a default. I can't find this information out. I would seem like this, this, and this. You would, but not if you ask an MVQ, a most valuable question.
Exactly. I love that kind of everything we've been talking about is, really if everything's moving in the right direction. But I did want to ask, obviously there are some times where we are practicing this curiosity and we are practicing asking better questions, and we just know that it's starting to revert into unproductive a category. Maybe somebody's starting to get defensive, or you can just, the vibes are shifting in the room and you are getting a spidey sense that the signal is coming. What should you do in that situation? And is there a way to stop it? Is there a way to redirect it? How do you handle that?
This is not a cop out because I'm going to get to it. But the first thing is, don't assume you know the reason. This person is squirming. They have a sneer on their face. They're off looking here. They don't like what I'm saying. They don't like my proposal. Don't assume you know the reason. Then you can take a step back and say, and here's another thing, out of curiosity is a major, major trick. If you say hey, I'm asking out of curiosity, that alone is a blow softener. But you say, listen, out of curiosity, how might we think about the timing of this conversation in a different way? Well, yeah, my dog is whining and she has to go out to the bathroom. I need to walk my dog. Or I'm really concerned because this happened the other day. I'm really concerned because the internet company is out there working on a poll, and I'm really worried that I'm going to drop this connection before I get to share my part of the proposal. And meanwhile, you're thinking, they don't like me. They're distracted. They think what I'm saying is stupid. And it really has to do, which is exactly what happened to me the other day. So finally I said, just so you know, I'm going to interrupt. And I'm loving this conversation, but I'm looking outside and I'm seeing Comcast out there on the pole. That means that any second I might lose internet connection. So I don't want you to take my distraction in the wrong click, gone, lost the connection. So don't assume that I was distracted because I didn't like what you were saying. Get that default out of the way. Sorry for whacking my microphone. Get that default out of the way and lead with true and genuine curiosity. That's the answer.
Yeah, I like that because I think it's sort of that you never know what people are going through type of thing, that you never know why they might be having a bad morning or they might be a little short. It, 9 times out of 10 might have absolutely nothing to do with you.
As my mother used to say. My mother used to say, we are all the stars of our own show.
Yeah.
And she said, and Becki, you're not the star of everyone's show. I was like, Mom, how dare you?
You're like, but I am, Mom. Look,
I am
the star. I am the star of the show.
And here's the deal. I think these assumptions are getting more and more easy to fall back on when we can label a group of people. Oh, they're just creatives. Oh, they're just technical, or they're just finance. They only care about this, kind of to your point of what you were saying before. These labels and these generalities, or they're just this type of people, or we don't like them because they're this type of people. Well, you are going to be negating a lot of evidence that can help you navigate your life if you are just basing your decision on labels. That person's always negative about what I'm presenting because they're jealous. Well, they might be having their dog whine and they don't want pee on their floor. I mean.
No, 1,000%. I think it's also just, again, coming back to what is the purpose? What is the goal? I also wanted to ask, because I know a lot of us are, wanting to start off this year confident, going for that new job, going for that promotion, going for that big client, that big win. And I feel like sometimes confidence, it lets off this air of like, I know everything. I don't need to ask questions. I got this, no worries. But so in some ways, people are sometimes rewarded for that confidence. Well, that's real leadership. They're steering the boat. But obviously curiosity can be very powerful as well. So balancing confidence with the curiosity, how can they balance that and still stay credible without looking like, oh, well, they're not decisive. They're asking too many questions.
That's fantastic. And that is a legitimate concern, because we do not celebrate uncertainty. We don't celebrate it in our leaders. We don't celebrate upgrading our thinking. We call it flip-flopping. So the first thing is to really, when you're reflecting on yourself, is to separate out confidence from competence. And then there's a technique you can use called blemishing. And this is getting a little far afield, but you asked a question. I want to give something that's really usable to the people that tune in, which is let's just say that you are, again, questioning something. You want to know something more. You don't want your boss or you don't want your client that you're pitching this business to think that you don't understand their business. Then you blemish. You say, I know a lot about the direction that you have gone, the cool things you've done here, here, and here. We are entering into, and I know this is cliche, we are entering into a massive vortex of uncertainty. Uncertainty with AI, uncertainty of what it even means to be human. How are you thinking about this in terms of, this is when we do with our training. I have the same thing. I want to know, how are you thinking about this? Are you hiring trainers? What do you want your employees to be able to do? I don't want to act like I don't know the company. I know the company. I know what they do. I know what they've done. So I say, I know all of this stuff. What I don't know is, how are you thinking about this? And how can I meet you and maybe I can't. And that's what I'm discovering here. And that blemishing, where you tell me an answer and I might say, our training is not for you, but I can find you someone. That kind of blemishing where you're saying, I know this, I don't know this, you tell me, and you're safe to tell me because I'm not going to sell myself down your throat.
And I think that buys you credibility with people. I was actually just at a speaking engagement yesterday in Cleveland, and someone was asking me, what was one of the hardest things about entrepreneurship? And I said, honestly, one of the hardest things that I find was holding this space of, I want my reputation to always be solid. I'm going to tell it to you straight. I'm going to tell you the truth. And also staying a capitalist and wanting to go after things. And I gave them this example. This was several years ago when Beyonce was doing the Super Bowl with Pepsi. And their team approached us and they were like, we want to do all these things, da, da, da. And what I knew that what they were asking me to do and the timelines, whatever, that it was sort of impossible, or it was going to be not possible for us. And given all the constraints they were putting us under, but it was going to be like a very lucrative project. And sort of holding that space of like, okay, I'm going to tell them the truth, which is, I don't think we're a fit for this. And also, I would have really liked to have had Beyonce as a client and had all that money. And so I think holding that is tough. It's really tough.
And, learning what was most important for them. How should I think about this? I was just talking to, I was just talking to an attorney and I said, I'm torn because on one hand, I am very, very grateful. And on the other hand, I am very, very frustrated. And this doesn't feel, this kind of doesn't feel excellent. So how can I feel excellent about this in a way that you'll feel excellent about it too? And I just put it on them because, I mean, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if there's time for the story, but I have a friend who is a videographer and he was going to do this kind of documentary on bridges. And so he was having to climb up into this bridge, those little houses at the top of the bridges.
Yeah.
And he was asked to do a video shoot, but he's afraid of heights. So he said, I can't do it. I'm afraid of heights. So I'm going to have so he called a friend of his who was a videographer and he got the job. And he said, well, I couldn't do it. I was afraid of heights. And then that person who did it ended up getting all kinds of, he's a big document. This was like his start. And what he came to realize was, and this wasn't me, it was him, he came to realize if I had been curious about the way I could overcome my fear of heights and still give the client what I've needed, that guy would have worked for me. I could have subcontracted that and we could have achieved something together. So instead of handing that off and just like, I don't have that and his career has been here and mine's been over here. So I always think about that. There's a binary option. Do the climbing, do the Beyonce, or not do the Beyonce. What are the options that are hiding in between those binary options that I can put my purpose here and create more options and then hopefully achieve my purpose. So that's.
I love that. It's such a good, it's just such a good way to really dig in when things get complicated, dig in when things get a little complex instead of just a yes or no. I know you talked about AI kind of in the example you gave before this bridge one. And I wanted to highlight this question, which was, obviously AI is coming. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Are you yourself using AI to ask better questions? Or how are you using AI to ask better questions?
Okay, so I'm going to go like this. The trick that I use AI all the time, generative AI all the time. What I do is I start with not only the purpose, but actually if I'm asking a question of someone, I try to, not a group, I try to take that group and create one avatar, like one person, not the LinkedIn community, but like the one person. And how do I want them to feel receiving this question? And how does that dovetail with what I need to get out of this question? Because I can ask ChatGPT, and sometimes it's kind of dorky, but that's a starting point. I want this person, this part of my community, this person has this is their LinkedIn profile, click, drag, click. I want this person to feel this. I want them to be excited. I want them to be curious. I don't want them to be stressed. I don't want to feel like I'm pushy. How can I make them feel the optimal way for me to get the following answer? How do I frame this question? And sometimes it comes out stupid, but sometimes it gives me ideas that I hadn't thought of before. Start with one person, exactly how you want them to feel, and go from there.
I love that you said sometimes it comes out stupid, because I tell people all the time, ChatGPT is a really smart intern, but like highlight on the intern. So yeah, sometimes interns have really smart ideas and sometimes interns have really dumb ideas. So don't take everything that ChatGPT spits out at you as like, woo, ready to rock. Yeah. That is excellent.
It's not this, it's this. It's not this, it's that. Stop with that. But also, it's a baby. ChatGPT is a baby. Give it time to grow up.
I know. Hopefully not too much time where they become our overlords. But that's
a whole nother topic.
Exactly. We'll see about that. I'm curious, when you are kind of on this constant learning journey, constantly asking better questions, where are you getting that inspiration from? Or where are you kind of constantly learning from? Is it from podcasts? Is it from newsletters? Is it from courses? Because I kind of feel like, at least maybe this is just me, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I kind of feel like with myself, if I get into a rut where like I'm not really getting curious about life or business or whatever, I sort of have to add some inputs. Maybe it's like some books or some podcasts to sort of like get my wheels back going, to get the momentum going. And so I'm curious, how do you kind of keep your engine kind of constantly on go?
So I have two different answers for that. One is I'm working on a very kind of large endeavor, which is a enterprise software company. So that's, so for that, it's a whole thing. And for that, I love to listen to the podcast Acquired. I love Acquired. I'm addicted to them because they do the history of the businesses, and then they break down the businesses in a very specific way. So I highly recommend that podcast. For my general life, I like to make sure that I don't get into listening to one thing, one topic, leadership, whatever. Sometimes I want to know about lizards because I love lizards, like chameleons. Sometimes it's about trading cards. What is happening in the trading card business right now is unbelievable. As people are graduating from college, they have nothing with their engineering degrees. They can't get a job. How can they buy and sell and trade in non-money materials? Trading cards. So I try to like look at the world and say, okay, what can I learn about that is completely disparate? And how do I put it together like a puzzle? So that's one of my crazy, and I could go on about all the things. You'd be like, okay, Becki, whatever. But for the work, Acquired. I love the podcast Acquired.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I had a phase, I've broken out of it, but I had a phase last year where I can just get sucked in to what I call like the self-help rabbit hole. Not self-help necessarily personally, but also just like all the business books, the Simon Sinek's and the Adam Grant's and the Malcolm Gladwell's, and there's always a new one coming out. So, another business book. And then I just found that it's like I'm drenched in this like business self-help leadership. And to your point, whether it's lizards or, romance books, sometimes I got to break out a little bit, and I got to throw in some Fourth Wing, and I got to throw in some Emily Henry in there, some summer beach reads to like cleanse the palate a little bit.
I am addicted to these trading cards. First of all, I play Magic the Gathering, which I am not the demographic for that at all.
Yeah.
So I try to also kind of break out of the things that would be appropriate for my demographic. Not that I love being an old lady. I'm not making any, like, I love it.
Becki, play Mahjong and like it.
And I don't love Mahjong, but I have played it and it's awesome. And a lot of people ask me, come and play Mahjong.
It's too hard. Right. I'm still learning. I find it too endlessly complicated.
It's sedentary.
Not for my brain, Becki. It's not sedentary for my brain.
It's
my brain's
hard.
on overdrive.
Now you made me think. I got to go back to Mahjong. My son plays Mahjong, so I need to kind of. But yeah, so I like to kind of learn about these crazy different things, whether it's, there's all these worlds. I literally went to the trading card convention last Saturday, and I did not see a lot of people that looked like me with my son. We were like doing our kind of curiosity quest. We're trying to understand something new.
I love this. Well, it looks like you're not alone. James also is like, I play Magic the Gathering too. So you're in good company, Becki. Okay. You're not alone.
You get the octopus for being smart to play Magic the Gathering. I usually just give out rubber chickens, but I got a couple of extra things. I love it. And that, talk about hard. That is hard, girl. Woo.
Yeah, no, that's a hard one. My nephews try to teach me a little bit of that. And once again, my brain, I have to like focus a little bit more. It's a tough one.
It is.
Okay, Becki, if someone who's listening today or joining us live wants to make better decisions, like starting today or starting tomorrow, like immediately, what is one habit that they should build right now or focus on right now?
I mean, I just cannot stress to you by yourself with no judgment, with curiosity, identify what your optimal outcome is meant to achieve and set that as your North Star. I cannot tell you how often we let someone else dictate. We're going to launch a YouTube channel. It's going to be because I want to get at least 1 million followers. Why? What if you got 1,000 followers that were exactly targeted to what you're trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve? Or someone says, oh, you're so fun. You should have a podcast. Why? Because people told you should have a podcast? Be very clear. The world is telling you all kinds of things to believe. You should go out and march. Why? What are you trying to achieve?
I love that.
Start with
Write it on a Post-it note. Write it on a Post-it note and put it on your computer.
Baby. You will give yourself a better chance of achieving your desired outcome. And if your options align with your values, you won't have that weird friction. I mean, you were very brave in saying, I have my capitalist tendencies. I'm going to call it out. I'm not ashamed of it. So if that is a value, make sure that it is aligned. That value is reflected in your options, because if you have that friction between your values and an option that you have chosen, you will reduce your chances of achieving your desired outcome. Don't give yourself that friction. We have enough friction that it is there already. Don't put it in place.
Oh, I love that. Okay. As you might have gathered, Becki, we are nerds around here and we love us some homework. So if you could give us a homework assignment for the rest of the weekend or next week, could be to do something, download something, could be to learn Magic the Gathering, could be to listen to a podcast about lizards. It can be anything you want that you think would be beneficial to us. What homework assignment would you give us to complete?
Okay. I wasn't prepared with this question, but I'm going to give you a homework assignment. When you are making a decision and you are using some kind of, so think about a decision that you have to make. Think of the number one piece of evidence you're using to make that decision. Ask yourself, how confident am I in that evidence? And by the way, don't say I'm highly confident or I'm not highly confident. Put a number, 80%, 83%, and then indicate what evidence would I have to change my mind. You have to be willing and you have to get comfortable with upgrading your thinking to change your mind. So just put something in there, something you believe, put your confidence, and then put something. And, if it's a sacred thing, I'm not telling you to, I don't want to, that world. I don't want to go there. But if it's some decision that you're making and you are very, very solid in here or not, put your confidence number and what evidence would you need to go change your mind, and then go seek out that evidence.
Oh, I love it, Becki. That is so good, because I feel like everybody needs to be willing to change their mind. We need to have flexible brains. Dare I say we need to have flexible leaders? I don't know, throwing it out there worldwide. Maybe people making some flippy floppy decisions wouldn't be so bad. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to do a special thank you to, we had so many new faces today, which I love to see in the live. This is awesome. But thank you for taking time to join Becki and I. We really appreciate it. You asked such great questions. If you have more questions for Becki and I, you can always message Becki or message me. Where's the best place to message you, Becki, if people have more questions?
LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. Becki Saltzman. And the rubber chickens won't stop coming. Good questions deserve rubber chickens. So keep the questions coming.
I love that. So if you have a good question, make sure you dig on into Becki's inbox. If you want to come next week with more great questions, I would love to have you. You can always go to getcoffeewithkim.com for the calendar. But we're going to be talking to Ian Barkin next week all about AI and workflows and incorporating it into your life, which I'm always nerding out and excited about. So if you can join us next week, we'd love to see you. Becki, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.